So thank you, Chairman Woolridge and board members. I appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I appreciate all the opportunities we have to share our views and come to understand our opinions when they are aligned and when they are not. It's only better. And I hope that communication improves as we move forward. My name is Randall Phillis. I'm the president of the Massachusetts Society of Professors. That's the union of faculty and librarians at UMass Amherst. And I'm here to talk about collective bargaining along with Annetta's comments. I want to remind you of a win that we gained together just a few years ago. This was about the governor's 3 bites at the apple truth about the way collective bargaining agreements are reached and paid for the UMass system. That the governor got to set the financial parameters that were offered to us in collective bargaining. The governor then got to decide whether or not the submitted approved or bargain contracts would be submitted to the legislature. And then after legislative approval, the governor again got the opportunity to veto that legislation. 3 bites at the apple. And then we had to go beg for a supplemental budget in order to pay for it. That seemed unreasonable, and especially with the diminished contributions from the state in terms of the overall funding of the university, it seemed unreasonable, and so we joined forces to have instead the collective bargaining costs and an increase in the budget go into the base budget that the governor submitted at the beginning of the budget process. This happened prior to the collective bargaining that occurred in 2012 for the very first time. We got Deval Patrick to buy into this new system. At that point in January, when we began bargaining, we knew the financial parameters, the money was being put through the legislative process, and we settled the contract very quickly, without strife or without significant concessions required on either side. It was a win-win. This time, however, the financial parameters were very clear from the governor's people very early in the process. And an increased budget was provided in the governor's House 2 budget. And so we thought the same system was underway. We then continued in bargaining with some strife, however. And there were takebacks, there were problems, it took us forever to actually reach agreement. And then once we did reach agreement, we received word that no, the increase in the budget that was received was insufficient for our money. That the President's Office and the UMass administration had chosen to spend their increased funding on other things and to not pay for the agreed collective bargaining arrangements and to pay our raises. And that's still the case to this day. So the issue is that the governor just signed legislation validating our contracts and making it clear that the raises and other financial parameters of our contracts should be honored at this time. And yet we still have not received payment or any word from the administration about any intent to pay. So we want to know where the Board of Trustees stand. More alarming, recently in a variety of newspaper accounts just in the past week, there's been statements that student fees may well have to go up because the faculty and staff are demanding raises. This is an unfair, unreasonable, outrageous pitting of constituencies of the UMass system against each other. It is not our desire to increase student fees. We had the same raise as every other state worker in Massachusetts. We're not asking for any special things, and yet we're somehow being viewed as to blame for a potential fee increase, and we do not appreciate or accept that premise. So what we would ask is for you to correct that problem, to not have President Corrett depart office with political strife in hand among the faculty and staff at the UMass system, and to have the new president, whoever that may be, enter their role with political peace. And that can be achieved by paying your duly agreed collective bargaining agreements and settling with units that have not yet settled their contracts. So we want to know where you stand. And so we make this request that you vote in a roll call vote on this motion. That whereas Governor Baker has signed legislation validating the collective bargaining agreements between UMass and unions representing faculty and staff, and to comply with state law, the UMass Board of Trustees hereby directs the UMass President's Office to abide by the settled collective bargaining agreements, settled agreements still in bargaining, and meet the financial and other parameters of those agreements without further delay. The faculty and staff of UMass are eager to have you play your stewardship role to comply with state law, and we would like to know where you stand. Thank you very much.
Well done.
Let me just comment on the last request that you made. As I said from the outset, open meeting guidelines restrict comments to specific agenda items, and I ask that we do not stray from those areas. That is not an item on our agenda for today, so we are not able to consider that for a vote, which I believe you're aware of. So, with respect to that aspect of it, we're not able to address that today. I'll let the President comment on some of the specific items that you raised as areas of concern on collective bargaining negotiations.
Thank you, Chairman Woolridge. I think we've had a lot of discussions on this at different levels, and we fully empathize with the position that the employees are in. We are working diligently and have been working diligently for almost 7 months to get the funding that is required by law to pay for the contracts. We feel confident we're going to get there by the end of the budget cycle, but there's no guarantee because it's not in our control. Having said that, let me clarify from our lens a couple of differences in interpretation from what we just said. When the governor's office called me last January and said, we're going to give you the, whatever it was, $519 million, we want you to freeze fees. And if you do that, will you also absorb the collective bargaining costs? We said no. We said that is insufficient funding to pay for the buildings the state should have built, the financial aid that the state should have provided, and a variety of other things, as you call them, that we're paying for that used to be part of the state portfolio. So we said we can either freeze fees or absorb the collective bargaining if you put the money in a separate reserve. But we can't use the same dollar to pay for both things. The state put the budget forward as a budget that included a freeze, which we froze. Unlike the state universities, unlike the community colleges that have raised fees. And as a result, we've been working through House 1, House 2, and the Senate budget to try to get the separate reserve that the law requires. The law requires that the state, because they set the parameters on the compensation, provide a separate reserve to pay for collective bargaining. And they haven't done that. And so we're in a situation where, as I said to a number of you individually, I understand you want your money, and I want to give it to you. You're looking to us to pay it because you don't care if it comes from us, the state, or the federal government, to be honest, as long as it comes. But we're in a situation where it's important to us where it comes from. And we don't want the state to put us in a position that every time they negotiate a salary increase, we wind up having to pay it. If we were to negotiate the salary increase ourselves, it would be a different situation. But the state actually sets the parameters, and that's why the law requires them to put the money in there. So we're working very, very hard to get those dollars, and I met recently with your president and asked her to continue to work with us, although I do understand the frustration, believe me. And I think if we work together on Beacon Hill, where the energy should be aimed, because the money should be coming from the state budget, then we can perhaps get there and get those dollars in place, which we all want to do. So that is a summary. I'd be glad to expand on that more if you would like, but that is our position.
All right, well,
Can I say one last thing?
This is not an individual position.
This is a position of the chancellors, the president's senior staff, and the board at this point. Now, this could change in time, but this is a very complex issue, I think, as you all know.
I do understand your position and appreciate your impressions of the complexity. And I'll just say that the faculty and staff at UMass have long been powerful political advocates for increased funding for the university. It is, however, when you're pitting us against students and you're not joining us in the political effort, but are simply doing it on your own somehow, that it's hard for us to be held over a barrel with no pay and yet to join a political effort to increase the money for the university. If we would have better communication, that could be solved. And it seems that a vote might be taken in new business, if that were to.
I've already addressed that part. Again, I thank you all, both the students and the faculty, for coming and for making your comments. Neither of your comments have fallen on deaf ears. We've heard it, we're studying it, we have been working on it, both of these issues diligently, and we'll continue to follow up on those things. So again, thank you for coming.
Chairman, if I may.